Alex, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Now, as we try to break down Israel's case, just talk to us about some of the key points that were made during the 3 hours that Israel was responding to South Africa's case.
Well, certainly today was all about that Israeli defense. Those Israeli lawyers coming to The Hague to plead their country's defense. It was based on what they described as legitimate self-defense, and saying that the South African submission, the South African proposal to the International Court of Justice in the Peace Palace behind me did not sufficiently acknowledge the atrocities committed by Hamas, and that would then lead to Israel having a right to defend itself. Now, the claims by South Africa were taken very seriously by these Israeli lawyers, and certainly Ronald Lamola, the Justice Minister, acknowledged that there may have been atrocity crimes committed on October 7th, but in the South African submission said that would never justify breaching the convention. To give you a sense of the atmosphere here in The Hague, you can probably hear the pro-Palestinian protesters here. They're all gathered. They just watched the proceedings, which have just wrapped up, on the big screen, and someone came onto the microphone and said, a very big cheer for South Africa. We've had a lot of people saying that the message to South Africa from Palestinian supporters is one of solidarity and one of gratitude. Big posters of President Mandela as well here in The Hague. So certainly an atmosphere of deep attention, a lot of concentration on the outcome of this case. That verdict on these preliminary measures may come in a matter of weeks.
And I want us to talk a little bit about that in terms of the next steps. I mean, we heard there the presiding judge as she was wrapping up, Judge Donahue, saying that, they will be in contact with both parties in this particular case. Any indication in as far as when we might see, particularly as it relates to the interim, measures taken, we will then see, that order being made?
Yeah, well, you've got two timelines here. Let's start with the first one of those interim, those preliminary measures that you just rightly mentioned. That will be a matter of weeks, we understand. As quickly as a matter of days, a matter of weeks is far more likely. The step after that is actually the question of enforcement. Who will make sure that that legally binding order from the court, if it comes, will be enforced? Well, that's down to the UN Security Council, including the United States, who could use its right of veto to block any enforcement action. To give you a parallel example, this court ordered Russia to stop all military action in Ukraine, and we can see how that was enforced in Ukraine. Now, that is the next step. The step after that, of course, is the court's final verdict on these allegations by South Africa. The court's final verdict could come, and it could take years.
Alex, of course, you are outside the Hague there. You've just mentioned briefly in terms of the protests. What is the sentiment? Just give us a feel in terms of what are people saying?
I've just missed the second half of your question, but you're absolutely right about the atmosphere here in The Hague, and actually speaking to some of the protesters, you get a sense of the polarizing nature of this case, the polarizing nature of this issue. You can probably hear them, those pro-Palestinian supporters. I'm seeing a few hundred Palestinian flags, some South African flags, some posters of President Mandela as well. And if you were to go about 200 feet down the road a few minutes ago, you would have seen a few hundred Israeli flags as well. Between them, the Peace Palace, the International Court of Justice, and a couple dozen Dutch police officers keeping these two groups very separate. You hear a real sense of gratitude from those pro-Palestinian supporters to the South African legal teams, describing what they call moral leadership being shown by South Africa today. If you speak to the pro-Israeli supporters, they will say very clearly they do not understand South Africa's approach. We saw one poster saying, "South Africa, how dare you?" And some are saying that actually, from their perspective, they see South Africa as complicit in the October 7th attack, the more extreme response there from some of those pro-Israeli protesters. So here in The Hague is no exception. It is a debate that polarized, and that has separated quite a lot of people.
Alex, thank you so much for that update. Alex Cadier there, who is outside the International Court of Justice at The Hague. Of course, we will be going straight there in a few moments' time. We understand the South African delegation will be briefing the media just in terms of what transpired in court today and as far as Israel's presentation is concerned.